Okay, Christmas has come to me. The reason for making this video is because I ran into a hiccup, which I didn't realize at the time of ordering, which is totally my fault, but this is the new stock for my 7 Rem mag, and this field stock from MDT, it does accept AICS pattern magazines, which are vertical stacked magazines, and the standard magazine length I believe is 3.76 or 3.750. CIP length, which is this one, is 3.860 or 3.850, something like that. And bottom line is the Tikka uses a 3.560 magazine length, and not a single manufacturer on the entire market makes anything smaller than a 5-rounder in this length of magazine. So for hunting purposes, it just drives me insane because, I mean, you're restricted with this stock to use the AICS pattern magazines. It won't accept factory, and it's awesome if the magazine fits inside the actual stock flush, or like damn near flush, so the profile is way smaller, which is what I'm trying to accomplish. So to fix this problem, I actually ordered 2 of these without knowing that they were CIP length. It was my bad, just wasn't reading, but I have 2 of them, and instead of sending them back, I'm literally just going to make them fit the actual opening in the inlet. So I did take one of these apart. It was pretty easy. It's just a pin and the back clip comes off, but I didn't actually have to. So what I did was, obviously I took a measurement of the magazine, the one that fits. It was actually like 2 or 3 thousandths under the size that is printed on the back, which is no big deal, but I measured 3.560 and I scored a mark with this guy on there using my calipers. And from there, all I did was I had a gap where there was existing material beforehand. This would have been the original, this was the original nose cone off of this magazine. So all I did was cut this back. So we basically cut the nose off. My cut wasn't perfect, but that's where the sandpaper came in. So I just sanded one side down. So now this is in 2 thousandths of being perfectly flat just by hand sanding. It didn't take very long. And then I made a mark after this piece is measured, which was 0.175 it ended up being. I just subtracted that from the overall length that I wanted, and now I've cut the magazine body at I think it was 0.390. So I left like 10 thousandths of extra room to sand down. And all I'm gonna do is sand down this until it mates up with this guy perfectly flush. Then I'll reattach it with the spring for the follower, and then I have to cut the follower down to fit that 3.560 length, and then just re-notch this bump at the front for the feed ramp, and we're gonna have a functioning 3-rounder that'll fit in a Tikka with using these MDT CIP length. They don't currently make these in Tikka length, which I think is kind of funny considering that they offer the Tikka stocks, and like the whole reason behind getting this chassis system was for the fact that I could run an extremely low profile 3-round magazine, because as a hunter, like if you have this on your back and you're carrying it around, having a magazine that sticks down to here with a sharp edge on it, even on a traditional sling, or I use a safari sling, this thing just digs into your leg. So that's really annoying. These I would probably not take hunting, but with this, now that this is properly to size, the balance point of your firearm, when you're carrying it, if you have to, is always right under the action, and you can't carry it one-handed. If you wanted to do that, if you were moving around quickly or chasing game, you just can't do that with a 5-rounder. So these are super important, especially if you're going to use this thing for hunting. So we're going to continue to modify this thing, and I'll show you guys a little bit of my progress. And I just figured I'd throw this out there as a tidbit because I know that there are other people that want these things. NMDT, or nobody else on the market for that matter, manufactures a Tikka length 3-round magazine. So we're just gonna make one and all of our problems will be solved. Okay, so I sanded off a little bit of my cut, and my cut is definitely not perfectly square. So all that's gonna require, because I left myself some room, is to now sand the one side down to match up with the other side, and I'll just keep taking measurements with my calipers, and I'll sand it down to the required length to then fit the nose cone on here, like so. It's still going to end up being stamped with 300 Win Mag, and it's still going to say 3 rounds, which is ideal. And we'll get this bad boy put back together. Do a functions test. It should work fine. I might have to do a little bit of messing with it, but I'll let you know if I run into any snags. Okay, so after about 5 or 6 minutes of sanding, this is what we've come up with. And as you can see, the front of this, where it would meet the feed ramp for the bore, is still sitting a bit proud. That being said, I've measured it so it fits roughly 3 thousandths under 3.560 through some sanding. And if I just hold this little piece in here for a dry fit test, it does clip into the chassis perfectly fine, and the bolt cycles and run. So, oh, it's kind of dark, but that little edge you can see down there just below the feed ramp is just barely catching, but I think I only have to slightly, ever so slightly, round that off, and we're gonna have a functioning 3-round mag for Tikka. So now all it's left to do is to glue these two pieces together. I'm gonna use some industrial adhesive. Gonna try that, hopefully it survives, and I need to modify this follower to be slightly shorter. And then we'll go grab some dummy rounds and from reloading, and make sure she feeds. Okay, so I have it fitting very well, and I've trimmed the follower back, but upon doing so, I kind of shot myself in the foot. And I guess this is why I'm doing this. So you can learn from my mistakes, but at the front of the follower, I kind of mangled this one up a bit. There is 2 little feet that stick out, and the purpose for those feet is to catch on a lip on the inside of the magazine to make sure that the follower can't go past the set height that it is required to sit at, which is actually slightly tuned down, because when it's in the magazine well, it sits flat. So with this one, what I'm noticing is like the round in there, and it'll feed just fine. But if you push said round, oh, the nose would stop this from happening. It's just really hard to do this with one hand. But if you push the round out, it'll then pop up like this and sit pretty proud. So because I wasn't thinking ahead before I lopped this off, the smart thing to do when I trim this follower would have been to left the tip of the follower intact, just zip it off straight right here, and then subtract this length from the rest of it, and then just reattach this piece of the follower so it'll still catch on this little ledge on the inside. It would be more proud obviously at the end, but there's enough of a ledge there that this will still work. So what I'm going to do is use some of this spare magazine body, and I'm going to make myself 2 little itty bitty tabs to mock this up, and they're going to be attached with some epoxy right on the end of the follower to keep it sitting inside the magazine. So I'll just mark where I want it to sit, which is roughly about right there. Like so. Another one for reference. You want this guy to sit basically flush, and then there's enough on the follower at the bottom that I can attach it so that it'll catch those two little lips, and that'll keep it retained inside the magazine body, and we've avoided disaster, because otherwise it fits great. So one little hiccup along the way. Other than that, she's all good, and I'll show you the final product here in a minute. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the measurement of this little gap at the bottom of the follower, and then I went and grabbed 3 empty cases and put some bullets in there in the same length that I would load my ammunition. And now I have this little piece right here. So this guy is going to get glued to the bottom of the front of the follower, and when it travels up, it is the exact dimension, to catch whatever is left over of that lip. And I just wanted to make sure that with 3 rounds in the mag that the follower wasn't going to bottom out, because if it would, I wouldn't be able to do that, and I would have to notch the follower and then glue this thing halfway into the thickness of it. But this is going to work, and it's going to be sweet. And just to show that this is the overall length, where I'm 30,000, or I am a few thousandths back from the lands. And oh, these aren't sitting all the way in there. Anyways, this is really hard to do with one hand, but with the magazine cap on, all of the projectiles fit in there with a good amount of clearance, so we're doing good in that sense. Everything is going to fit, and it's all going to work. It's basically just like making a factory Tikka magazine out of something that was not supposed to be that. But for a first try, it's going pretty good. Well, you might be wondering how I'm going to put it all back together, and this is going to be my solution. I use this stuff for tying flies, like specifically gluing the heads for chironomids, and it is extremely strong. Like if you get some of this on your fingers and accidentally do that, your fingers aren't coming apart. So I'm hoping that this stuff will hold together well enough. It's very thin, which is what I want, because I have 2 really flat mating surfaces and I don't want any bulk. I thought about using epoxy. Problem with epoxy is it's a little thick, so we're going to use this crazy instant adhesive, and it's probably the strongest super glue I've ever come across anyways, and this should hold it together just fine. So here's the completed follower, and it fits in here. And as you can see, it catches on those lips and it can no longer fall out. So now we just need to put her back together, glue the nose on, and she'll function. After 3 dry fit runs, it functions. My glue line ended up not being, cat hair, glue line ended up not being super perfect. It was the first time I put it together, but I had to take it apart twice, because what was happening with the rounds in there is the bolt would skip over the top of the round on the last round every time. So I ended up just opening up the end of the ramp, because the shells were getting caught right where this is kind of opened. Like it was really diving down there, probably because, and I compared the 2 magazine lengths, and the feed lips on the metal one are quite a bit shorter, so I took a fair amount off of the plastic one to make it feed, but then that made it better. But then the last round still wasn't feeding, and it was because the spring tension wasn't strong enough to keep the shell propped up when the bolt was pushing it, because they do fit fairly tight inside of this magazine. But now that the spring has been stretched out to like over twice its normal length and there's more tension on this, it works fine. So I'll show you just 1 second. Okay, so you have 3 in there. Clips in just fine. feed's fine. So it probably took me a couple of hours to honestly put that together, but that is, oh, let's see, other one. This is the first ever Tikka length 3-round flush fitting magazine in the world. Because I built it myself. Well, kind of. MDT built it and then I made it work, but pretty happy with how it turned out. Feeds fine, fits good. Thanks for watching. Okay, so hopefully that little tutorial was helpful. Like, as you can see, as it sits right now, great form factor. The reason behind getting this in stock, the whole idea with it was to make this rifle a little bit more suitable for longer distance shooting, and most of that's going to take place off a bipod or off a pack. And just having like the ergos behind the stock as it is right now is really nice. This integrated thumb shelf is pretty slick. Gives you a lot of control and purchase on the gun, and the grip's like not quite 90, but it's pretty close. But the whole purpose to getting into this thing was because I could get these 3-round mags. It was just my fault for not seeing that they only made them in the one length. But now that we have the one that's modded and she clips right in, it's super nice and clean. Gives you a capacity of 3. It's more than enough for hunting. Generally you only need 1 anyway. And it is way better than this. And what I was trying to get my point across with these magazines before, and the reason why I did this, is because, yeah, sure, the magazine isn't that big. I mean, it is pretty gaudy sticking out of the gun. You could go and get around without, like, this being a big problem. Like, you strap it onto your pack, or if you're driving around in a truck glassing, like, not that big of a deal. But if you want to go walking with this thing, and let's say you're 90% of people who use a traditional sling, like, think about that magazine sitting on your back and just rubbing your side raw as your gun is slinged over. Like, that is digging into my lap there. Like, it's kind of brutal. These edges on these things are super not, they're very, very pointy, and it's very skinny, so it gives a lot of sharpness to it when it's against your skin. And for me, running a safari sling, like, my gun's kind of always down here, and the magazine is going to be constantly resting against my leg. This is just a no-go. But with the shorter mag, like this one is now, clips in there, no sharp edges. You can do that all day long. It's not going to bother you. And then if you have to carry the gun, the balance point is under the action. So that's where your hand needs to go. If you want to pick it up, it's not awkward and all super ass heavy. Just very much better. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. I know that without that magazine being part of this equation, this stock probably wouldn't be staying. Like, I'd probably get rid of it. I'd just sell it, find something else. Just go the more traditional stock route with more of a swept handle. But because I can use that magazine, it changes the game. So this stock actually is gonna probably get some mods. I really wish I could get a backfire recoil pad for this, but they don't ship to Canada. That was one of the things, but it's gonna get some odds and ends across the board for little mods for the hunter. And I'll probably make that another video. I still haven't ordered all the parts for that, but it's gonna involve some drilling and some tapping and some dremeling, and we're gonna be turning this $300 chassis, because that's what I got it for in a Black Friday sale, into something that's packing a little more heat above its pay grade. I'm not made of money. Spending like $1,600 on a Hunt 26 just isn't in the, or something like that in the chassis world, just isn't in the cards. Like, that's literally more than the cost of the gun, and it's just a stock. So not really idealistic for the average guy. Like, even the scope, like, it's a nice piece of glass over a couple grand, but I didn't pay that for it. So yeah, anyways, hopefully that was helpful, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to do this yourself, all I can say is go slow. Like, the reason I was willing to try is I got one of these for like 25 bucks ish. I don't mind taking the gamble, throwing away $25 if it doesn't work. I added a second one to go after it, but if you think about it, it is like a $50 piece of plastic, and if you mess it up, it's like throwing away most people's 1.5 to 2 hours worth of work. So do this at your own risk. I will say once it's done that it does work flawlessly. It just takes a little bit of messing around. The one tip I'd give you if you were to do it is just make sure you make all your cuts bigger than leave yourself room to sand everything down. And definitely just trim the feed lips back. That was the other one right off the bat, because anything with a belted case like a 300 or a 7 mag, it's going to catch and then jackknife in the gun. And stretch the spring out, because the spring tension was like very, very light, and you can feel it on these ones. Like they don't have them stretched out very much. Like it takes zero pressure to push them down, but with it extended, it's quite a bit more firm and makes it feed properly. So thank you for tuning in, I guess, and we'll catch you in the next one.